Good morning, delegates. First of all, I want to thank the Aquan and the Takuquan for letting us have this meeting on their land. So thank you very much. Chish. My name is Sethtin Yukhat Duasak Yehit Ayakhat. Deshitan Ayakhat. I come from Rangoon. My family comes from Rangoon. And it's my honor to be here with you today to give you an update on IPEC and our operations this past year, and some good things are happening, so I'm excited, and I hope that you all are excited as well to know what's happening. I want to acknowledge and recognize my board chair, Richard George. Would you please stand, Richard? Richard's been with the utility since it was born in the 70s. And I also have with us our vice chair, Grace Villarreal from HUNA. Thank you, Grace. And I just happen to have a couple of my staff members here in the back. If you could please stand, Roxanne Drake Burkhart. Roxanne is our billing officer and controller. Well, actually, no, she's controller now. And next to her is Rosa Rice. She works in billing. Thank you, Rosa. And there's only 7 people in our office here in Juneau, so I'm sure you guys are gonna have to get back out there and take care of things. Anyway, I've got a PowerPoint here for you. Is there okay. Do I use this? Does anybody know? Okay, there we go. Okay, and then, okay. First of all, IPEC is a consumer-owned electric utility, which is significant because we don't have a profit motivation like some utilities. Like here in Juneau, they get a rate of return of 10 to 13%, and IPEC only gets about 4.9 at our last rate case. But we serve the southeast communities of Rangoon, HUNA, Cake, Cluckwan, and the Chilkat Valley. We are a tax-exempt entity, and we're fully regulated by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. This is what I'm going to talk to you about today. This is kind of an update from last year, so some of it might look familiar to you. I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we face in providing electricity in our communities, and goals and opportunities that we have, and some recent successes, and then ask for your support. These are some of the challenges that we have. We have dependence on diesel electric generation, and some of you remember when diesel was only about $1 a gallon, there was really nothing in the communities that could compete with that, because the cost of installing, say, a hydro project are really expensive, and it takes a long time to recover that cost. But once fuel prices shot way high, then we were caught in a matter of about 10 years in a very poor position in having rising costs and rising rates. And because we only have 13 customers spread over 5 communities, we have low economies of scale. Because we have to have 4 separate power plants to run everything, and we only have 1 person at each of our communities to be responsible and take care of the plant for us. People don't want to do big business in our communities because of our high rates. I mean, they'd rather go somewhere like Petersburg or Juneau or Ketchikan or Wrangell, where they have rates that are around 10 cents. We have high plant cost per customer. That's a function of low economies of scale. And we have weakened economies due to declines in timber and fishing industries and outmigration. And there's really high costs of alternative energy technologies. Somebody asked me yesterday, well, why don't you use wind? And I have several colleagues in my industry who talk about wind, but that's really because they have nothing else. They don't have hydro opportunities like we have with our rainforest here in Southeast. So those things cost about $1 million per unit, and if you can get 20% of your base load from a wind project, that's good. But we have other opportunities here that are superior. We also have a lot of compliance and regulations that we have to deal with. It's kind of seems silly, but we have to actually get air quality permits, which allows us we basically have to pay to pollute, which is silly. I mean, it just seems silly because it's already a high cost, and so, but we're allowed a certain number of metric tons per year, and we have to actually pay the state for that. And then we always have new regulations coming toward us too, and that's really hard. Not too long ago, they didn't consider that, they assumed that the Alaska Marine Highway was a road. And because of that, they were trying to give us more regulations in regards to the pollution that comes out of our diesels. So we had to fight that. So we're constantly having to battle bad policy. Here is our pie chart for 2012. And if you look at the largest section there, that's the cost of fuel and purchase power, which last year was around 28 cents. And part of that is hydro, so it's kind of, in the communities where we only have diesel, it's about 33 cents per kilowatt hour just for the fuel. And then the red section is non-fuel production. That's for salaries for our operators, insurance on the plant, everything it costs to keep the power plants up and running, and overhauls on our engines. And then the orange section is distribution, which is the cost of maintaining the lines and the poles. The blue section is customer expense, which is a little over 2 cents, and that's for billing. And then the A&G expense is almost 10 cents, and that's for costs of our audit, our attorneys. A lot of our salaries go into there. Let's see, board governance goes in there. And then we have regulatory expense of almost a penny, and that's just to be regulated. That's how much we had to pay last year. And then the blue section, I believe, is depreciation. I guess it didn't show up on my PowerPoint. And then the purple is the interest expense on our loans. And this is at a zero margin. We actually lost a little bit of money last year, about $25,000. This is our average cost of fuel per gallon since 1998. And I think I said this before, but in 2008, we had that big spike. But no one's really talking about it anymore, even though it's climbed even higher than then. And now we're at about $4.12 a gallon. That was our average in 2012. And as fuel prices rise, then rates necessarily have to rise as well to cover the costs. Remember, we have to cover our costs. We don't need to make a profit, really, but we do need to cover our costs. So naturally, as a big part of our cost is for fuel, actually more than half in our diesel communities. And we have a flat growth curve, so we just aren't getting new customers. People are leaving, and our average consumption per consumer keeps dropping as people just are more and more conservative. And as a nonprofit, this is to show you how, I guess, unprofitable we are. The blue section is the revenue per kilowatt hour, and the red is the cost per kilowatt hour, the cost to produce and sell that kilowatt hour. And then the little orange section is actually our net operating margin, or our net income. Again, we have high plant cost per customer. We have 4 separate plants. Our cost per customer for plant was $14,332 in 2012, and high plant costs, again, lead to low economies of scale and high rates. And the lack of jobs has really made things even more difficult for our people in the village because people don't fish as much as they used to. It used to be family business, and now it's really not as much as it used to be. And so people are moving to Juneau and other places where they can find work. And then we've also had the problem with the lack of harvestable timber, where it wasn't that long ago in Cake where it was booming. There was a lot of jobs, and it's really gone down from there. And fewer consumers means high fixed cost per kilowatt hour sold. Again, the economy is a scale issue. And again, a high cost of energy frustrate economic development because people don't want to do business where they're paying 60-some cents a kilowatt hour. And then the Power Cost Equalization Program is a subsidy that's paid by the state on the first 500 kilowatt hours per residential meter. So it doesn't help any of the businesses at all. In fact, only about 30% of our kilowatt hour sales are eligible for that subsidy. And I just say, without lower cost electricity, there will be little to no new economic development in our communities. So what we've done is we've focused our efforts on reducing the cost of power. But I believe it's a quality of life issue. Our residential customers only used an average of 371 kilowatt hours per month last year, when the national average is 909. So that tells you how conservative our customers are. They know where that 500 kilowatt hour mark is, where the PCE cuts off. So they are very cognizant of that. I hear about one light in the wintertime to light the whole house. So what are we doing about this? In 2009, IPEC's board wrote an energy plan to become diesel independent. And we have several projects on the line for that we're working on. For one, we are working on developing the Walker Lake Hydro Project for Chilkat Valley and Cluckwan. And we have a geothermal project that we are pursuing as well. It's very expensive, however. It's at the head of Tenakee Inlet. It's not Tenakee Springs proper. It's actually about 30 miles west of there, at the very head of the inlet. And we're really excited about that because it's our early estimates by our consultants say that we can get 3 to 6 megawatts from that plant, which would be enough to run Hoonah 3 or 4 times. So we really are anxious to get that online. But what we need to do next is actually drill out there and verify the resource and verify that it is compatible with electric generation. So we're really excited about that. We asked for money from the legislature this year, but we didn't get anything. And I think I know that our legislators spoke yesterday or the day before about the struggles that they've had in getting any funding for our communities. So I guess I'm not surprised we didn't get any money this year because we need $3.5 million just to do the drilling. And we've been working with Cake on the intertie between Petersburg and Cake. And there again, that's a very expensive project too. It's around $40 million. But just in case that doesn't come out and we aren't able to get the funding for that, we are working on a Plan B scenario, which includes a couple of small hydros and possibly some wind. We're hoping to get Plan A because that's what everybody wants, and we've had really good support in the legislature for that, but losing Bill Thomas was a huge blow to us, as well as Senator Kukash, who were able to really push for these projects for our communities. Again, IPEC only has 7 people in the headquarters office, and we are very, very busy. But we try to keep our costs as low as possible. And that's significant. I mean, 7 people is probably not enough to serve 1,300 people. But we know that adding 1 person would add to people's rates, so we do our best to do what we can with as little as we have. And we recently got the Ferc permit for the Gardena project and the hydro project for Hoonah. And we are going to be breaking ground on it this year. We're working with Sealaska and with the Hoonah Indian Association to do that. We continuously monitor new technologies to reduce power costs, and we will always pursue the most cost-effective alternative over the long and short term. And that's significant. I have people say, well, why don't you do tidal energy? Why don't you do wave energy? We have all these resources. Why aren't you doing that? And the reason is because those technologies are not available for commercial production yet. They're just not ready. But I believe when they do come, that we'll be able to turn the tide on, so to speak, on this problem we have in the villages with the high costs. And then lower cost power will aid in economic development. And we haven't borrowed any money at IPEC since 1999. We seek grant funds for all of our capital projects, and 100% of the funding goes directly to the project. We don't use any of our administration. We don't spend those dollars on our administrative portion. It all goes for direct cost for the project. And that's important too, because we want to make sure that we use all the grant money for the project. We've been really successful in getting grants over the past, since 2005. This is a list of the projects that we were able to get money for. The Gardena Hydro Project funding is about almost $8 million. And I just hope and pray that that's enough money to get that project done, because some of my colleagues have been putting in new hydro and they're coming in a lot more expensive than the estimate. But if we are successful, we'll be able to build that project for absolutely free for the community. They won't have to pay 1 penny for it. It'll be just a huge gift for Hoonah. So we're very excited about that. And then we had the grant for the Tenakee Inlet Geothermal Exploration of just under $600,000. And we just this past couple years installed a new power plant at Hoonah, which has a waste heat project, which provides heat for the school, the swimming pool, some of the city, I think it's the fire department, and the senior center. There's about 5 buildings that are served heat through that project, which is great. We do charge them for it, but we charge them at 50% of the fuel costs that they would have had to pay, and also using our fuel cost, which is a bulk rate. So they get a really good deal. So they're paying less than half for what the fuel cost them before. Same thing in Angoon. Angoon has a power plant with waste heat, and they heat the school there too. And that really helps, because the education dollars for our communities just seems to be getting to be less and less, and they have to do more with less, just like everybody else. And then Representative Thomas was able to get us the $1.265 million to purchase the 10-mile hydro. If you ever drive up the Haynes Highway, you'll pass it on the way up. It's on the hillside on the right. It's about 10 miles out. So we now own that. We also rebuilt the Cluckwan distribution system. It was quite a few years ago now, but that was really significant because there were some kind of scary places there. There was places where the snow would melt, and it wouldn't melt anywhere else. So that's kind of scary when you have little kids running around. And we built a line extension out to Killisnoo Island and the ferry terminal in Angoon with $623,000. We did a pedestal upgrade out at Cake, about $108,000. I think they need a new one now. And then we got $2.99 million for the Cape Petersburg Intertie permitting and studies. And we hope that project, we should get the permits by the end of this year, and then we have to really aggressively pursue grant funding. And so I'm hoping that many of you in this audience can help us to support that effort. And we got $2 million in debt relief from Rep. Thomas again. And that helped buy down the amount of interest expense that we're paying. So that's the total of $26.32 million that we received in grant funding since 2005. And my staff is really good at writing grants. We're getting really good at it. As I said, we have the funding to complete the Gardena Falls Hydro, I hope. We'll find out really soon. It's going to be a small run-of-the-river project, but will displace about 30% of IPEC's current fuel consumption at Hoonah. So that's significant. That's probably about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So we're really excited about that and being able to provide a lower rate to the residents of Hoonah. And again, we're working with Hoonah Indian Association and Sealaska to break ground this year. We got to do the dirt work, and then next year we'll install it and hopefully bring it online in 2014 if we don't run out of money. And there's also a couple of other small hydro projects for Hoonah that we're looking at in conjunction with John Hillman and Bob Starbird at HIA. And we're also trying to get funding for the geothermal project. So we have other options in Hoonah that none of them will solve the problem 100%, unfortunately. We would like to have big hydros like they have here in Juneau or in other places in Southeast, but we just don't have them close to our communities. And transmission is very expensive as well. I mean, when the best way to do a project is to have a big load center and then have a project that you can develop that's close by. And what comes to mind for me immediately is the Angoon Thayer Creek Hydro. That's only 6 miles away from the community. It's going to provide plenty of power for the community, and they'll be 100% hydro once that project goes in. And that project is being built by Juneau. And then, how can you help? You know, we have so much regulation in the Tongass and Southeast, and we just need to let people know that we have needs and we live here. This is our land, we live here, and they just need to stop giving us more regulations and quit shutting us down whenever we try to do something. That's especially something that's going to help the people. So we need to educate the administration. The Obama administration hasn't really been that good to us. They have federal programs for energy, but none of them recognize hydro as renewable. So we can't get funding from the feds. They do have some funding for geothermal, though, and we're going to be hot on the trail of that for Huna. But you know, we just need to educate our administration that we're good stewards of the land. We live here. We care about how things are. We don't want to pollute. We want our industries of fishing, and we need timber to come back as well. And the people of Huna wrote, man, I must have got 100 letters of support from Huna, and I just really appreciate that, supporting our geothermal project and our request for funding this year. We weren't successful, but we have all those letters, and we'll be able to use it when we go after federal programs for that. So with that concludes my presentation, and I hope that you guys learn more about energy and know that IPEC is working really hard to solve the problem of high-cost energy in the communities we serve. Thank you.